Number 1. For some insight, I'm a 25-year-old female. This particular incident I'm about to describe happened a couple of years ago at a bar my friend and I frequented weekly. Looking back on it, I realized how much danger we were in and how fortunate we were to come out unscathed. Also, I apologize in advance for how long this is. I tend to be very detailed in my storytelling. So, before I get ahead of myself, allow me to rewind to a couple of hours before this incident. It was a few hours before my friend had to go into work, and we had plans to grab a few drinks before she held up her shift at a local bar. I had just arrived at her house, and we were on our regular walk to the bar. Note, not the same one that she works at, which is not by means a long distance, but does involve weaving through some shady areas in a dark trail that we sometimes take when it's still light outside, and there is enough of us that we can handle ourselves. This night though, it was just me and my friend, and it was very dark, so we took the longer way. I remember thinking how menacing the moon looked as it glowered an eerie orange in the night sky. A premonition maybe, eh? Probably not. I'm just a very observant girl. We made it to the bar safe and sound, and we were in the middle of ordering our drinks when a group of 9 men, all decked out in business suits, entered the room. Upon second glance, we noticed they had a woman with them. She was young, appearing to be in her early 20s, and unlike the men whom were dressed like they were about to sit down for a business conference, she was dressed in casual jeans and a t-shirt. This was the first detail I noticed that seemed odd to me, but I shrugged it off. I didn't know them, and it was none of my business. As far as I was concerned, they were just a group of businessmen who had just come back from a long and probably very boring conference, and now were just unwinding for the rest of the night. The woman was probably a friend of theirs that met up with them along the way. No big deal at all. Still, they stood out like a sore thumb, and so every so often we would look over at them to find that they were already staring in our direction. Okay, fine. They probably just sensed we've been paying closer attention to them than normal. We paid no more attention and chatted amongst ourselves about the things we usually do. Work, our social lives, our love lives. Nothing that anyone would find to be of great interest. I tuned out of our conversation though when I felt the men's eyes on us again. My ears perked at the mention of a few notable key words.
2 girls. Very pretty. I want the blonde.
My stomach clenched. If they were talking about us, I was definitely the blonde girl. My friend's hair is as dark as night, and me just the opposite. With the way they were looking over at our table, I knew they meant us. Needless to say, I was instantly uneasy at the idea of 9 random men talking amongst themselves in hushed voices about me and my friend. Then, to my dismay, the woman of the group came over to our table. This caught my friend's attention too, and her eyes scanned the woman with an expression that mirrored my own. The woman smiled brightly at us, instantly giving off a friendly vibe. Too friendly.
I hope this doesn't come off as creepy, but I just wanted to tell you that you girls are absolutely beautiful,
she said. Oh, thanks, I said, instantly wary. My friend nodded a thanks too, barely looking at her, but she too looked uneasy. The woman seemed to take this to mean an invitation to sit with us because that's exactly what she did. Before I realized what was happening, she had scooted into the booth to sit right next to me.
See those guys over there?
She said, pointing at the table of men from which she came from. Yeah?
Well, they've been wanting to talk to you girls from the moment they saw you both, but, you know, they're really shy, so they asked me to come over here and talk to you for them.
Ah, that's nice, I said, completely baffled by how weird all of this was. If they wanted to talk though, they could have just come over, right?
I told you, they're shy,
she said, and then giggled like a schoolgirl that made her seem way younger than she was. Yeah, I thought, all 9 of these fully grown men are surely too shy to talk to a couple of young 20-something-year-olds.
See the cute dark-haired one with the beard on the far left?
She asked, pointing to one of the men at the table that fit that description.
He's been dying to ask you out,
she said to me, and then pointing to another guy, she proceeded to gush to my friend about how he was interested in her as well. When we didn't look as enthused as she expected, She prattled on about how she had known these men all of her life and how sweet and trustworthy they were, and that we just had to take her word for it because she's a girl too and she has our backs, something like that. Yes, how very convenient that the supposedly sweetest guys of the group had an eye on each of us, respectively. I fought the urge to roll my eyes at how obvious of a setup this was. I waited impatiently for her to just cut to the chase and get to the proposition she had clearly come over here for.
I know how this must look to you girls, and you're probably used to this all the time. I totally get it. I would think the same thing too. Us girls, we have to look after ourselves, right?
Yes, she actually had the nerve to say this.
You seem like smart girls, but you have nothing to worry about. I've known these guys since we were children, and they wouldn't harm a hair on anyone's head, much less two pretty girls like yourselves.
More flattery, more grooming. I had to hand it to her. This girl was a crafty manipulator. She was telling us everything a girl in our position would want to hear, playing the female ally card to gain our trust. It was becoming blatantly obvious what role this woman played in these men's agenda. A female pursuer would seem much less threatening to young females. I was disgusted.
Anyways, the guys and I are about to leave to the nearby club.
And then she mentioned the name of a local club, and continued to say that she would love us to come along.
You can come your own way, and meet us there if you are more comfortable. They totally understand. They're totally gentlemen.
I bet.
And don't worry, they'll pay for everything.
Final red flag unleashed. This was far shadier than the motives of your average pickup artist. My friend and I shared a look of bewilderment from across the table, and then nodded in understanding as we came to an unspoken agreement as to how to deal with this situation.
Well, we appreciate it, and tell them that we're flattered.
My friend said politely with the fakest smile I've ever seen her muster plastered on her face.
But we're just leaving in a minute.
The girl frowned now, not even bothering to hide her disappointment.
But why? Where are you girls off to?
My friend then shot her a look of annoyance, clearly put off by this woman's nosiness, but she said,
I have to work in 30 minutes.
This actually wasn't entirely a lie. My friend was due to come into work, but not for a few hours. And this is when the girl's demeanour changed. Gone was the personable and sweet girl trying to be our friend to reveal a fucking snake. I'm not even exaggerating. In seconds, this woman transformed before our eyes into a stone-cold predator. She was still speaking in the same friendly and polite tone, but her smile had twisted into a sneer and her eyes had narrowed into a beady slits as she glowered at my friend.
How much?
What? My friend asked, completely baffled.
How much would you be making tonight?
She asked, although it sounded more like a demand than an inquiry. My friend divulged the moment. The girl nodded and then walked off. We thought that was the end of it, and we breathed a sigh of relief. We could see she looked like she was conferring with her comrades about something, and then, before we could move a muscle, she was walking back towards our table looking more menacing than ever now. She took her seat next to me again.
What if I told you we would pay you twice the amount of money you'd be making tonight if you come party with us?
She asked. I'd say that's cool, but like you guys would do that anyway, my friend said with a strained smile. The girl then grinned, taking out her purse and putting out the fucking fattest wad of cash, dumping it on the table in front of us. Our jaws dropped.
This is triple the amount you'd be paid tonight,
she said. She even counted it for us. Now, we knew something was terribly, terribly wrong, and that her male friends weren't just pickup artists or even rapists. This was a business conference after all, just a very different kind. Okay, my friend blurted out. I shot her a look that read something like, what the fuck are you doing? But she insisted that we were going with them and that it would be fun. Here I was, worried that I would have to do some serious damage control when she said, we'll go, I just have to go to the bathroom and freshen up. Oh. The woman seemed pleased with this, and smiling, she put the money back in her purse and walked back to the table. One of the men looked over at us, smiled, and waved. We jumped up from our seats and practically raced to the direction of the washrooms, which is in a hallway right around the corner that would conceal us from their praying eyes. As soon as we got the chance to talk, we shared the same thought that these people were running a sex trafficking ring and that we needed to get out of here now. Our plan was to take the back exit, which was further down the hallway from the bathrooms, but after some deliberation, we considered that the woman might be onto what we were really planning on, and that she might be waiting for us on the other side of the door. The back door also led to an alley, and we agreed that especially in a situation like this, it was far too risky. As luck would have it too, my friend's phone was temporarily out of service, and mine was dead. We decided that we would have to enlist the staff members' help. We walked back to the table and told them that we'd be going with them just as soon as we order our drinks. One of them offered to get it for us, but we were already power walking over to the bartender. We told him everything. They must have noticed we were talking to him for longer than was necessary to order a few drinks, and thank God they booked it out of there. All the same, the bartender told us not to go out there as they might be waiting for us outside, and that he'd call a cab for us to make sure that we got home safely. Thankfully, when our cab arrived and we stepped outside, half expecting them to jump out of the shadows and conk us over the head with bats, there was nobody in sight. We hurriedly climbed into the cab and took it back to her place. I'm fully convinced that if we had agreed to go with them, we would have been drugged and sold into a sex trade. I'd probably be holed up in some prison somewhere across the world right now. The suits, the business-like nature of their meeting, the woman they sent to try to gain our trust, the bribery. This was some seriously shady shit. The final nail in the coffin though. A week later, a girl from the area was declared missing, and her body was found dumped in a creek outside of the city a month after this incident. Apparently, the last she was spotted was in that fucking area of town. I don't know if there's any connection to these two events. They very well could have nothing to do with each other, but I can't help thinking there was. Edit. In my collection of this event, there was a specific detail I forgot to include in this story. In addition to the woman trying to lure us away with temptations and playing the female ally, one of her other games was pulling the lone female card by trying to guilt us into going with them on the pretense of her being the only girl in the group and how boring her nights would be if we didn't go. It's a small detail, but it uncovers yet another layer of manipulation she had used to try to get us to come with her. Of course, that tactic didn't work on us either. Number 2. I am a small girl, standing about 5'4" and only weighing around 84 pounds. I'm also 17 and a senior in high school, so I'm still living with my dad who has a heart condition. I never really go out much and prefer to stay home most of my time. Well, in the beginning of January of this year on a Monday, I came home from school like normal. My dad was in his chair in the living room like always, watching TV. He asked me how school was, and we had a nice conversation, and then his friend, who's 9 months pregnant, came over asking if he wanted to ride to the store. No one in our house could drive, so he said yes. I was left alone, something not out of the ordinary. I put on my earbuds and started listening to Pandora as I pulled out some of my homework to work on. After a while, I'm not really sure how long, but after some time, my dog Lily, a small 3-year-old long-haired chihuahua, started barking. I took out my music and got to see what it was that she was barking at, thinking maybe another skink got into the house, but she was looking at the door. I then heard a knock, and being home alone, I didn't answer right away. I looked through the small window next to the door when I heard it again, and I didn't see anything. Then, I thought maybe one of my neighbor's kids I babysit from time to time needed something. They were small enough that I wouldn't see them through the window. Still, being cautious, I cracked open the wood door, only peeking out to see who was there. Standing on the other side of the glass screen was not a child, but a grown man. How the hell did I not see him from the window? He was taller than me by a couple of inches, but I'm not sure exact, and was definitely bigger than me. He was an African American man, and looked to be about in his late 20s or early 30s. I knew almost everyone in my neighborhood, and I did not recognize him. Can I help you, sir? I asked him, trying not to show how uneasy I was.
I'm looking for a crazy redhead that lives here,
he said, and I was really confused. I'm sorry, you've got the wrong house. My dad and I lived here for 5 years, and none of us have red hair. I said. It was the truth, and I was hoping he'd go away seeing that I'm home alone, and I'm really uncomfortable at this point. He then pulled out a cigarette and lit it.
Yeah, right? I'm really good at reading people, you know.
Honestly, I don't know who you're talking about, sir. Now, something felt off, but I stayed calm. He takes the cigarette from his mouth and looked down at me.
Whatever. I'm gonna borrow your porch.
I then locked and shut the door, really freaked out now, and I don't know if it's because I scare really easily or the vibes I was getting from this guy. I then went to the other side of the house and locked that door too before grabbing my pocket knife just in case and calling my dad. I told him what had happened and that the guy might still be on the porch, and my dad informed me that he was only 2 minutes away and that I needed to stay calm. I kept my knife in my hand and sat in the family room in the middle of the house and waited. My dad's friend came in first and told me that they found the guy looking into the windows and trying to get into the house, but it's okay now because dad was taking care of it. Hearing that, I started shaking. So, the whole time I was waiting for my dad, he was trying to break in. My dad came in and said that the guy had left, but I needed to stay inside, and that he's gonna check outside around the house. His friend went with him, and I was left alone once again. What ifs kept running through my mind, and I got up to look out the window. I saw the man in front of the house heading down the street. It took me a moment to realize the bike he was on was the one that I got from my sick grandma for Christmas. I started crying a bit and slid down to sit on the floor to calm myself. I heard police sirens a moment later and got up to see 3 cops had the man pinned to the ground 2 houses away. Almost my whole neighborhood came out to see what was going on, and phones were out recording it. I called my dad again to see if it was okay for me to leave, and he told me yes, and he's out with the cops. Crying, I ran to my dad. He was breathing heavy and was in a bad shape like he was previously in a fight or something, and the medics were trying to convince my dad to get into the ambulance. One of the cops looked pretty bad too, and it turns out the stranger they now had in a body suitcase had beat up a cop and tried to go after my dad. All my dad wanted was for the guy to leave and give my bike back. The man kept repeating over and over again that the bike was his and that we stole it from him, and that apparently he had a heart condition and that this whole thing was police brutality and that he was innocent. I just stood there in shock. I saw another neighbor talking to the cops, saying that he'd seen the man looking into the windows for 30 minutes before he knocked on the door, and he thought that maybe he knew my dad. That creep was there for half an hour before I opened my door. It turned out one of the cops was my old middle school recourse officer, and seeing how scared I was, he came over to me and talked to me about what had happened so I didn't have to talk to a cop that I didn't know. After everything calmed down, Dad walked me and the bike home. Dad took his medicine for his heart and decided to stay home that night instead of going with friends like he planned. So, his friend came over to our house to watch the place and hang out. As I lay down to go to bed, I remembered something I wanted to ask my dad. What exactly did he say to the guy before he took off with my bike? And what did the guy say to him before Dad told him to leave? I got out of bed to ask, but stopped at my door when I heard Dad telling his friend the conversation he had with the stranger before coming in to check on me. The last thing Dad said gave me goosebumps and made me go cold. He said to his friend with what sounds like fear in his voice, "Who would want to rape my girl?" Needless to say, I cried myself to sleep that night. Number 3. I still kick myself for this. So, about 10 years ago, I was a lowly undergraduate working in a local pub for extra cash. It was a proper East End old man's pub, the type that is rapidly disappearing. The drinks were cheap and the locals were in every night for a chat. I loved it. It was a great fun. One night, I was working and this huge guy comes in. Seriously, like filled the door frame large. As with all my locals, he immediately got a nickname, Meathead. He proceeds to spend the night propping up the bar, drinking and making small talk, telling me that he's moved back in the area after some time away. As the night went on, he got progressively more drunk and started telling me about how his wife had divorced him, how badly she had treated him, and how hard he had worked as a lorry driver to keep her happy. As a bar manager, I was pretty used to these sort of sob stories, and I saw it as part of my job to lend an empathetic ear. I had also recently experienced a very traumatic breakdown of a long-term relationship, so I was happy to have someone to bitch out my ex to. I guess we all know where this is going, right? Yes. He started coming in all the time, and yes, he got very, very friendly, but honestly, as any female who has ever worked in a pub will tell you, this is standard practice. All you have to do to warrant this type of attention is pour the pints and have a vagina, so it didn't really give me any concern. That was until he started waiting for me after work to walk me home. I didn't want him to do this, but he wouldn't really take no for an answer, and I thought that given I only lived about 20 meters from the pub with 3 other people, it'd be okay. Wrong. Shortly after, he started walking me home every shift. His behavior in the pub got worse, and he would get more drunk and sometimes even threaten other customers for looking at me the wrong way. I started to get my flatmates to come and meet me after my shift so that he didn't need to walk me home. Eventually, he started a big fight in the pub on a Saturday night and punched 2 security guards and got barred. I, by this time, was looking for a better job for the summer and got offered a new one in the city. More money, more tips. I was relieved, and for a while, I didn't see him. Okay, so here comes the stupid part. After our exams, my friends and I went out and got smashed. I mean, really smashed. We were in this bar opposite my house, and out of nowhere, this guy appears. Explaining that I'd just finished my final ever exams, he buys a bottle of champagne, and in my drunken state like an idiot, I drank that too. Inevitably, he tried to kiss me, and stupidly, I allowed it to happen. Then, he starts crying, saying how much he liked me and how much he had missed me. I could barely even stand up. At this point, my flatmate, who knew what a creep this guy has been, drags me off and says, "What the fuck are you doing? We're going home." He follows us out the bar and asks me for my phone number. And then I told him that I made a mistake and that I had a boyfriend now, and that I wasn't going to give him my phone number. He went mental, screaming and crying and calling me
Yet another dirty whore.
So, we ran over the road and into our house. Next day, bang bang bang. My flatmate goes to answer it, and it's Meathead, so she tells him that I'm not here and that he should go away. Same thing next day, and the day after, until after about a week I shouted out the window to him that if he didn't fuck off I'd call the police. Then, the letters started, then the flowers. I should have gone to the police, but I blamed myself for what was happening, if I hadn't been so stupid. Anyway, 2 of my flatmates were Italian, and as their semester had finished they moved out. Then, my other flatmate went travelling around South America, leaving me alone in the house for 3 weeks before I moved. I was freaking out, and so I spent a lot of time staying at friends and avoiding being in the house alone. Eventually though, I had to go and get some new clothes / do my washing. Anyway, I came home to find that my flat had been broken into, so I phoned the police. They asked me to check what had taken place, when I realised that not only had nothing been taken out, but the only thing that was out of place was my underwear drawer being open and my bed looking like it had been slept in. I finally lost it and told the police what had happened. They said that they would look into the Meathead, and in the meantime, I gathered my things and moved out into another area of London. When the police got back in touch with me, what they said absolutely floored me. Meathead had not been away as he told me, but rather, he had been in prison for the attempted murder of his wife.
Hey guys, it's the Grim Reader. So, thank you very much for listening to this video. If you enjoyed, why not check out my other videos by clicking on the links on the screen. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Thanks a lot for listening.
And how fortunate we were to come out unscathed. Also, I apologise in advance for how long this is. I tend to be very detailed in my storytelling. So, before I get ahead of myself, allow me to rewind to a couple of hours before this incident. It was a few hours before my friend had to go into work, and we had plans to grab a few drinks before she hung up her shift at a local bar. I had just arrived at her house, and we were on our regular walk to the bar. Note, not the same one that she works at, which is not by means a long distance, but does involve weaving through
Number 1.
For some insight, I'm a 25-year-old female. This particular incident I'm about to describe happened a couple of years ago at a bar my friend and I frequented weekly. Looking back on it, I realized how much danger we were in at all. Still, they stood out like a sore thumb, and so every so often we would look over at them to find that they were already staring in our direction. Okay, fine. They probably just sensed we've been paying closer attention to them than normal. We paid no more attention and chatted amongst ourselves about the things we usually do. Work, our social lives, our love lives. Nothing that anyone would find to be of great interest. I tuned out of our conversation though when I felt the men's eyes on us again. My ears perked at the mention of a few notable key words.
2 girls.
Some shady areas in a dark trail that we sometimes take when it's still light outside, and there is enough of us that we can handle ourselves. This night though, it was just me and my friend, and it was very dark. So, we took the longer way. I remember thinking how menacing the moon looked as it glowered an eerie orange in the night sky. A premonition maybe, eh? Probably not. I'm just a very observant girl. We made it to the bar safe and sound, and we were in the middle of ordering our drinks when a group of 9 men, all decked out in business suits, entered the room. Upon second glance, we noticed they had a woman with them. She was young, appearing to be in her early 20s, and unlike the men whom were dressed like they were about to sit down for a business conference, she was dressed in casual jeans and a t-shirt. This was the first detail I noticed that seemed odd to me, but I shrugged it off. I didn't know them, and it was none of my business. As far as I was concerned, they were just a group of businessmen who had just come back from a long and probably very boring conference, and now were just unwinding for the rest of the night. The woman was probably a friend of theirs that met up with them along the way. No big deal.